guys, it is Tristan with Nerdouts Newsstand, and I want to talk about the new release, Malignant. I'm in control of reproductive health, and just women in general. So the reason I am doing it like this is because I want you to have a chance to pause the video. I want you to watch the movie if you are interested after the non-spoiler review, because trust me, it is worth it. Now, non-spoilers first. This movie opens up with a woman named Madison Mitchell, a woman far enough pregnant that she shouldn't have to constantly worry about the baby inside of her. But she does, because unbeknownst to her sister, who will play a very key role in the spoiler part of the review, this is her 4th pregnancy with 0 live births, 4 miscarried. We get to meet her just amazing husband, Derek, who seemingly has caused these miscarriages because from the word go, he is not only mentally abusive, but physically abusive as well. And that is all I'm going to tell you about these characters for the most part during the non-spoiler, because I don't want to give too much away in this section. But what I want to make sure I mention is how much this movie reminded me of horror movies of a bygone era. It had the suspense of Friday the 13th. Remember that anxiety you felt watching the characters in Friday the 13th at camp? Good, because expect a slasher similar to the nature of something like Nightmare on Elm Street, to the point where the movie becomes almost intentionally bad because it is that good. Thought the trailer maybe looked a little derivative? That was all intentional. James Wan makes great use out of not only an amazing score on this movie, but the shadows, the wild visuals, the great camera work, and plays off the confusion of the audience. And that's all I can do for non-spoilers. So let's switch over to the spoiler section. You have been warned. Now, let me be clear about something. I can see how this movie will divide, whether it is on the allegory we will talk about here in a minute, or on the intentionally bad line delivery, feeling almost like in the first act, like something made for a bad network television show. Speaking of bad network television shows, that opening sequence was so bad it was almost good. We see a creepy hospital and a VHS special of a doctor talking about a boy, when suddenly the room in which this person is in becomes a bloody mess, and the Dr. Weaver decides it's time to cut out the cancer. We all learn that this person can seemingly manipulate electronics, though that really isn't explained. But this all leads us back to my non-spoiler section, and we're introduced to a present time Madison Mitchell and her abusive husband, Derek. Derek blames Madison for all of the miscarriages and is mad at his small dick. So he pushes a pregnant Madison up against the wall and breaks open the back of her skull. And as it would with any abusive husband, Derek must sleep on the couch. This leads us to our antagonist, who then attacks Derek after he investigates a blender, starting in the middle of the night. In a few more weird instances after Derek attacked, we see our antagonist turn its attention to Madison, who is eventually knocked out and wakes up in the hospital. We now meet Sydney, Madison's sister, and find out that Madison has lost this current baby for the 4th time. We also meet the cops on the case, Kekoa Shaw and Regina Moss. Soon we learn that Madison was adopted at age 8 and knows nothing of her prior life, nor does she remember anything about it. Now, this is going to lead us to Gabriel. Gabriel is the person openly committing these atrocities. Gabriel then turns his attention to the doctors from the opening sequence, and Madison is able to somehow see them to prevent them. There is some wild visuals within these 3 murder scenes that are done so phenomenally well and make you uncomfortable at the same time. I really, really liked the visuals. We also meet a Jane Doe who is kidnapped instead of brutally murdered. Eventually, we will learn this is Madison's biological mother, who is being kept alive at this point for unknown reasons. This is when we meet Addison's adopted mother, and we learn a little bit more about who this Gabriel actually is. When Madison was first adopted, she would talk to Gabriel or even blame him for bad behavior, making her parents think that Gabriel was basically an imaginary friend she used as a coping device because of trauma and growing up in the hospital. But when Sydney was born, her sister, Gabriel disappeared and life went back to normal for the most part. So that leads us to all 3 original doctors dead and Jane Doe falling through Madison's ceiling. Of course, leading the police officers to think that Madison has been the killer all along. And after a short interrogation, Madison is placed into jail only to be harassed by the women around her. And this final act is, I don't know how to describe it besides balls to the wall crazy. Sydney heads to the hospital to find out more about Madison. And we see through old VHS tapes that Madison's mother, at the age of 15 years old, was raped and was forced to carry this baby to term, with her parents calling the child an abomination and made the poor girl give up, Emily, because Madison's real name is Emily, give her up to the hospital. This is where we learn the truth, the entire truth. Gabriel is a parasitic twin based off an extreme version of a teratoma, when embryos basically don't separate in the womb like they should. One twin is dominant while the other is underdeveloped. It is not to be considered something like a conjoined twin because the underdeveloped twin is dependent upon the body of the other. Like a parasite, Gabriel feeds off of Madison. They did try to remove Gabriel during the time when Madison was at the hospital as a child, but because they share part of a brain, they were unable to remove him completely. And when Derek pushed Madison into the wall, he unknowingly reactivated him and also became Gabriel's first victim. And because they share part of that same brain, Gabriel can place Madison in a sort of coma or prison of her own mind, making her think she is seeing something instead of having her body and using it to commit these atrocities. We get 2 amazing fight sequences, one in the jail and the other in the police department. And I would say these 2 scenes alone are worth watching the movie. They are fantastic and brutal and bloody and do not be eating when you watch this movie. Now, the climax happens when both Sydney and Gabriel arrive at the hospital that is holding Madison's birth mother, who is in a coma. Now, Madison's mother wakes up. She looks at Gabriel and says she is sorry to have given them up. And one delivered line from Sydney changes everything. And hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Sydney tells Madison Gabriel has been feeding off her fetuses and is the cause of all of her miscarriages. But that doesn't matter because Gabriel quickly shoots and kills Sydney and the mother. Or so we think. At this point, just like Gabriel can control what Madison sees, Madison has learned to control what Gabriel sees. And Gabriel never killed Sydney, never killed their mother, but it was a ploy by Madison to trap him in her mind. She knows she cannot lock him away forever, but the next time she will be ready. And being ready is what makes me bring up my final point here. And I saw these themes early on in the movie, yet, yes, this is another slasher, thriller, suspense, horror movie. But at its core, it's not. At its core, it's about control. It's about the subjugation of women. This woman, Madison, has been controlled her entire life, along with most women in this movie, but Madison specifically. Her body has been at the mercy of men from before she was even born. Her mother was a rape victim, forced to carry a baby to term. She was then institutionalized till she was 8 years old and controlled by Gabriel. And even after Gabriel is removed, she married an abusive man who would not only not let her contact her family, but laid his hands on her multiple times. On top of that, Gabriel has controlled her pregnancies every single time, causing her to miscarry for his own selfish needs. Now, there are several times in this movie we see Madison remind us that her body is her own, only to eventually take control and lock him up in his own mind prison. Taking away a woman's choice is what abusive men do. Men with little power try to control. And it's done, unfortunately, more often than you even realize. Madison is not only in an abusive relationship with her husband, or dead husband now, but with Gabriel. But instead of using the abused becomes the abuser trope, she flips it on its head and she rises above it. At its core, Malignant is about control, and more specifically, a woman's ability to make her own choices with her own body. And I'm all here for it. Let me know what you guys think. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.